What is up, my ninjas? I am Strydent, and welcome to the long-awaited look at the Mezco Batman 1989. It's 3 years and 4 months in the making. So we're all familiar with the look of the figure, what it comes with, etc. And strangely enough, we're familiar with several versions of the figure. We've seen them at Toy Fair multiple times, different Toy Fairs, Comic-Cons, etc. And like as you can see here, this is a completely different figure from what we ended up getting. What we ended up getting feels like at the last minute, Mezco wanted to imitate Hot Toys and give us the seamless body, kind of like the suit over a skeleton of some sort. The problem is the suit that they gave us, instead of just making it a suit, they gave us a silicone body. And I think the Hot Toys kind of has the same thing going on, but I don't think it's as soft and as fleshy feeling as the Mezco version is. So there's a lot of things when you see these two figures, if you've seen this and then you look at the Mezco one, that kind of give you the idea. But I'm going to go into it, and I am not going to hold back. A lot of the reviews that have been online up to this point have been a lot of like very kid gloves in approach. And it's like people really need to be objective. So that's what you're about to get from me. And I know some of you are probably like, how is this any different from any other review from Strydent? It's not really that different. It's just typically I'm giving you a happier, perspective, because usually I am reviewing figures that I am passionate about, I'm super happy about. And in this case, I'm super passionate about this. I told you this was to be the last Batman figure for me. This was supposed to cap off my whole collection, because Batman 89 is what started me as a collector. That's when I really was like, I want to keep these figures so I can have them on display when I'm done playing with them and remember what it was like to find these figures and play with them and come up with storylines and beat them up, lose parts, find parts, etc., etc. And this figure, it set out to do some things, and then somewhere in the process, with the bad communication, the bad choices when it comes to materials and engineering, along with other bad choices along the way to get us to this point where we waited 3 years and 4 months for a figure that was a pre-order. And they released several other Batman figures since, several other Mezco figures like what's the guy's name? Gomez. Several Gomez's, several Rumble Society figures, all before we got this. And it's the simplest Batman design. It's frustrating. As far as film goes, it's the simplest Batman design on film. They got it right with the pictures I showed you. What we saw at Toy Fair was enough. It was plastic over like a neoprene suit. That would have worked. It would have worked fine. We wouldn't have had as many complaints. As long as everything stayed in place, we would have been good. And they made some changes, and it seems like people are doing exactly what I predicted they would do, because they always do this when it's a Batman-related thing, and they just give it props simply because it's Batman, and that's not going to fly. So, being that a lot of things on my end have changed, before I was simply just reviewing figures, buying figures, playing around with figures, I've kind of moved away from just reviewing figures and now making them. And there's a process, and there's, a level of thought that goes into the form and the function of these figures. And what I see, I've complained about it with Hasbro, that's why I don't really collect Marvel Legends anymore. I've seen it with other, figure lines, Figuarts drops the ball, picks it up, drops the ball, picks it up. And, I watch quote unquote reviewers showcase these figures and give them props without actually objectively looking at what's being presented, And then there's the tribalism that we see when it comes to like McFarlane versus Marvel Legends. But, you know, they're ignoring the difference in quality of the figure, you know? So today you're going to get a lesson in objectivity. Papa Strydent's going to take all of you to church. We're going to church today. Easter Sunday. We're going to church. The resurrection of Papa Strydent. But yeah, sit back, relax. This is going to be a long one, very in-depth, because I'm going to give you the most in-depth review of this figure on YouTube, bar none, as I usually do when it comes to any figure, especially of characters I love. Batman is one of my favorites. It's what started me on this path. So knuckle up. We're about to jump into it. All right, let's talk about the package. Okay, this is one of those things that hit me right off the bat. So the packaging, it's a nice quality print of the Batman 89 logo, that original bat insignia with the gold background. Box is a matte black. It's nice, but I have a couple things to say that I've noticed when it comes to this whole packaging thing in comparison to previous packages. Okay, so let's talk about these boxes. Now, as soon as I saw the box, I was like, damn, this feels like something is missing. It feels like, I don't know, cheap, you know? And then, you know, the more I mess with it, the more I look at it, I was like, let me bring out the old boxes. I mean, look at this. This is a slip cover. So like, you know, this is what you get. Front and back. That's quality, you know? Then, just the box itself, it's got a freaking magnetic door. It's got all this going on in it. Are you kidding me? This is the first Batman that they made? This was the last Batman before Keaton. At least that was released, you know? And they did it up. They made this shit feel like a quality, I don't know, like you were getting your money's worth, you know? There's no other way to put it. You were getting your money's worth. Then this one, similar setup, except this slip cover is top to bottom, and there's no door that flips open once you know, get the slip cover off. Front, back, everyone's familiar with this shit because this is the format for, you know, the reveals and everything, you know, the proper reveals, and then you have your awesome images down there. Quality, right? This is the package. Front and back. I don't get this. Why do you think we want fucking Gomez's head instead of a bat symbol like the other one when it's a Batman, or Spider-Man when it's Spider-Man, etc., etc.? It's an example of where they were starting to lose the plot. Now it brings us to Keaton bats. And no, this is not Keaton bats from Mezco. This standing here is the NECA one. I had to bring it out because you know I'm going to do a comparison, because it seems like most of you guys reviewing this figure either never got that figure or you're afraid to do a comparison. You know me, that is incoming. Oh man, I've had a long day, so I apologize for my slowness. But front, side, very old school. This was the Batman 89 pattern. It's very reminiscent of the Toy Biz box art and stuff. Nice. End of the movie, but they used the figure to recreate all that stuff. All these images. Looks good. Other side, same as the first. Top, 112 collective. Pose, play, display. Bottom, Lego Mumbo Jumbo. That's it. How is this the same company? You know what I mean? How? Why does it feel so downsized? Yet, This figure cost $80. This one cost, I want to say 80 something. And then this one was 100 plus. Something's wrong there. First red flag that I have. But anyway, let's move on. So do y'all remember years ago when I think I was reviewing G.I. Joe Retaliation Duke, and I talked about how Hasbro has a habit of packaging all this tat, you know, all this weird shit in the package to make you forget or smokescreen from the quality or lack thereof quality in the figure that you're about to play with. What the fuck is all this? What is all this bullshit? It's going right in the trash. This shit here is exactly what I'm talking about. Tat. The fuck does this have to do with my $117 figure? You know what I mean? Garbage. Straight up hot, steaming Gorilla Dookie. This shit is terrible. Get all of this the fuck out of here. All right. So let's talk about the figure itself. Finally getting straight to the nitty gritty. So the figure itself, this is what it looked like coming out of the package. Very nice presentation, of course, because, you know, Mezco has that down pack when it comes to what the blister looks like. You can see everything laid out perfectly for you. It looks like a lot. You know what I mean? It looks like a lot. You can see both capes. You can see all the batarangs. Everything's laid out perfectly. I love this about Mezco figures. You know, like I've been saying in other videos, it's an experience. But anyway, the first thing that hits me is that the body is covered in this weird, like rough, kind of blurry thing. And it brings me to the first of my nitpicks and my problems and my issues. Immediately upon opening the figure, I'm met with an issue. So, what the fuck is going on with this ab area? Why are there areas peeling? The fuck? There's peeling going on. Now, I noticed in a whole bunch of other videos, people attempted to do stuff. You shouldn't have to have these kinds of problems. This is the kind of shit that when you start thinking about how much you paid for this figure, it's like, what the fuck are we doing? You know what I mean? What the fuck are you doing, Mezco? And why is it that no one feels the need to say something? Now, I contacted Mezco about it, so we'll see what they say. But anyway, got him out of the package, put the cape on him. I had to do some finagling to get the cape to look right because the cape is very stiff. And this is the one without the wire in it. And I'm going to get into it a little bit more later. But you can get him to present very well. This head sculpt is by far the best of the 6-inch Michael Keaton head sculpts, you know, as Batman that we've had. I'm kind of anxious for someone to do the 92, you know, Batman Returns version, you know, other than Hot Toys. But yeah, like you can see that it's not like it's impossible to make him look legit because all the sculpting is there. The sculpt work is not the issue. It's everything else. So now back to the figure, and we're talking about the body overall. So you can see he's got kind of an average build. This is the silicone body stock. I haven't done anything to it. I refuse to go out and buy some protectant or some shit and spray it so that I can present to you the figure looking better than it does out of the box. That's bullshit. This is a review. Objectively, this is bullshit. It shouldn't look like this. But it's not the worst, because by the end of the movie, the suit does kind of look like this. So if you want to, you can use that to your, you know, advantage and make this your battle damaged third act Batman. You even do get a head that works for that. But the body itself, it's an average height, average build. And, you know, all the details of the suit are actually there. I like the fact that they paid attention to the upper body kind of having the shoulder pieces that kind of like sit on top of the bicep and the shoulder. And then the fact that it's a front and a back flap, almost like a Kevlar vest. Then the gauntlets, that's one of my favorite things. Every time I draw Batman, I've always drawn him with these gauntlets because it just makes sense. Same with the shin guards and the fucking Air Force Ones, I think. Or no, Jordans, I'm sorry. Not Air Force Ones. It would be funny if Batman wore Air Force Ones. But yeah, if you look closely, you can see that there are Jordans under there with a covering over top of them. The Nike swoosh is gone, so that they don't have to deal with all that shit. But anyway, I do have another issue, and I started talking about it before. And you're going to see a lot of this. So let's talk about the way the head works. The head is a magnet system, just like on the Supreme Knight. And for some reason, the head and the cape don't jive well. You have to do a lot to get those two things to work. And I'm going to go into more detail about how the cape works later on. But like you can see, the scallops on the cowl don't sit flush with his shoulders. So even when you get that thing almost all the way on there, at some angle, it's going to pop up. The cape itself is really thick. Again, I'm going to get into that when we get into the capes separately. Oof, man. But anyway, let's talk about the accessories. So, as you saw when I opened the package, this figure comes with a ton of accessories. Most of them are like doubles and triples and stuff. You know, it's more of the same stuff that you know, like doubles of things, triples of things, quadruples of things you already have. You know, extra hands, extra batarangs. There are a cool bunch of smaller gadgets, which is nice. They add to your collection of Batman, you know, gadgets. He is that kind of a character, so this is kind of awesome. And then, of course, you have your stand and your baggie, your Figma baggie. And for some reason, a lot of people don't like the baggie. I'm like, hey, keeps everything in one place. You've got 4 portraits, 3 extra ones. The one in the center is the one with the movable eyes. That's typically the one that's on the figure in the package. And then here are the 2 capes. The one on the right does not have a wire in it, and the one on the left does have the wire in it. I have a lot to say about these capes because unlike previous releases, the material that they used, even though it looks the part, is much too heavy. Again, here's the wire. The previous one I showed was the one without the wire. Another nitpick, issues, problems, you know, problems, issues, and nitpick. And like I said, get used to this screen because there's a lot of this. So the cape itself, this is supposedly a drape cape. It does not drape. Then the one with the wire, which is the action cape, that's what I call it, it has a wire in it. It also doesn't drape, but because it's an action cape, it fares better than the drape cape. Then there's the system that you're supposed to use to connect the neck to the capes. There's too much material. So you spend a long time trying to remove the material. It's almost like stretching out an umbrella when it gets folded inside out. You got to pull it apart as you push it down on that neck piece. And if you, after like 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour sometimes, eventually you will get it down enough. And this is the inside out view of it, looking like a puckered asshole or something. But, you know, you spend enough time getting enough of that excess, you know, stuff out the way, and this is what you end up with. So what gets on my nerves the most about all this is right now I have the Supreme Knight and I have the Batman 89 standing next to one another. You can see that the same concept, system, mechanism that's used on the 89 Batman was used previously on the Supreme Knight, and it was done well. You can also, if you're a keen-eyed viewer, you also see something else about that cape. I'm going to get to that in a second. This ring is so small, and it doesn't quite do the job, because if you look at it, I have it on top, but it's not clipped in place, which it needs to be clipped in place, but the material pushes it up. After you fight it for so long, this is what you end up with, if you don't do anything. And this is what both capes look like until you fuck with it and find a way to tuck things in different places. And I think if they really paid attention and they looked at the Hot Toys Batman and the material that was used for that cape, it's a slimmer, thinner material. It's more in line with neoprene or like like a hide of some sort, but it drapes well, and it has that finish that they were trying to get. But you could forego the finish, as they did with their original version of the figure. And just as long as the cape is easy to manipulate, and it's not super thick and it's not in the way. I mean, look at the cape on this promo picture. This would have been the perfect version of that cape. Perfect. This cape looks phenomenal. It's not exactly what he had in the movie, but it gets the point across, and it looks thin enough to be manipulated. Furthermore, right, with the previous 3 Batman figures that Mezco did, they knocked the cape game out of the fucking park. And somehow they forgot about this? So I'm a Batman fan. I guess some people could call me a super fan. I've been a fan of Batman for so long. I've been collecting Batman stuff for so long. I have lots of accessories and gadgets and pieces that can be used across all of the collections, right? So what I did here is I decided to take the drape cape from the Supreme Knight, also from Mezco, and substitute that, for the actual cape that he came with. And it seems to work perfectly. I don't have any issues whatsoever. If you look at the cape from any angle, you can see that all the details, everything that Batman's cape is supposed to do, it does. It drapes well. It even kind of cuts it drapes in a way that separates it on the pleats, almost like pleats. So you get, each scallop has some folds to go with it. And where it doesn't do it, like here, you can kind of still see shadows falling where those pleats or the scallop edges would fall. So this would be an alternative to what you could do to pose this figure. The problem is, this is what they should have done when, giving us this figure. Okay, so let's get back to the accessories. That was my problems, issues, and nitpicks when it comes to the cape. So anyway, accessories. When you're using the wired cape, you can achieve some pretty good poses, some pretty cool. My chair wants to make a lot of noise. Some pretty dynamic stuff. But anyway, here's the remote, the voice remote for the Batmobile from the infamous stop scene. Looks good. It's simple enough. You know what I mean? Not much to expect. Here is a communicator from a deleted scene. I did see this because I was getting the Batman magazine back when this movie came out, and I saw the scene, that was supposed to be for. That is the smoke pellet. You kind of get a look at it in one of the opening sequences in the film. Here's the line launcher from the infamous, Flugenheim Museum scene. It's pretty nice. It's very simplistic. It's kind of cumbersome, and it's crazy to see that something like this, which should be in Batman's arsenal, has been redone in like the Arkham universe, and they made it more of a streamlined design, something that makes more sense and covers the same distance. Actually, in Batman Returns, he has an even more, streamlined version of this. But I always love this thing, and it fits over his hands well. You don't have to worry too much. The articulation is there for the 2 line launchers, and it looks great. I don't have any issues with it at all. The trusty spear gun with the actual spear and line accessory looks good. It's a bendy wire for the line, so you can get it looking like it's in, it's in motion, and that's what it's all about. That's about what you can do with this figure, is pose him in motion. You can actually, there's a secondary one where it's separated and it comes around the carousel on the belt. There is a little magnet that works on both the spear gun together and the 2 separate pieces. And I tell you, man, I can't do this thing in peace. Magnets. There's a little magnet on the inside of the belt. Hopefully it's clear enough for you guys. Batarangs. He comes with 4 batarangs, and these are the kind of fold out batarangs. Actually comes with 5. I'm being a little bit, I was off. So 4 of them are just the standard batarang that he holds and does what he's doing. And then there's another extra one, which I'll get to in a little bit. And actually, that's it right there. It's got a line connected to it. It's also a bendy line. So you can do shots like this where it's in action or, whatever else. Here's the shuriken. Also, I think from a deleted scene. I don't remember him using these in the film. And I've seen the film so many times, but it looks cool. It looks really cool. It's nice that they gave us stuff that we didn't really see in the film. Then, of course, we have the head sculpts. We have the standard head sculpt. This is what the majority of us are going to leave on this figure if we have him displayed. Then we have the mouth open, like he's about to say something or he's in the process of saying something, which, it looks fine. I don't have any issues with it. You could see it works in a number of situations where he's with other characters. So I'm not complaining about that at all. The likeness doesn't fade either with, all these different head sculpts. It actually looks pretty damn good. Then there's the infamous eye rolling head. And the mechanism is fine. It goes from left to right, right to left if you want. That's it. He can't look up or down, which is kind of a bummer because even the one from Reveltech allows you to look in any direction. But, this works. It gives him that creepy stare that he has. My gripe is that the eyes are too big, especially in comparison to the other standard face. The eyes are just too wide. He looks a little crazy, like crazier than usual, but, it's effective. You would just think, though, that with the amount of time that we waited, that they would have had time to test this thing. And considering that there are other options on the market for the same price, they should have been able to pull off all the directions with the eyes. Also, I forgot to mention he has the battle damaged face, which looks really good. And it kind of goes with the condition of this costume or this figure in general. All right, now let's get into the articulation. Because there's a lot of articulation here in areas, but there's things to say. Things I gotta cover. So as you can see, you can get some dynamic poses. It takes some work because this is not a very intuitive figure in most, areas, but you can get some dynamic poses. Some. It's not easy, and I want to say that depending on your particular figure, because of the process and because of what's going on with the what's underneath this soft silicone body, your mileage will definitely vary. As you can see here, it took me a while. I did some things to get him to move, and it looked good. It looked pretty damn good. I was like, okay, cool. Now, if only the material itself that the body was made out of was a better, more durable material, I would have been happy. You know what I mean? He by far has one of the best ab crunches that any of these Mezco figures have ever had. I was kind of surprised and kind of like, okay, I get it. They should do that going forward. But, you have to really work at a lot of things, and judging the tolerances is very difficult. So let's get into like all the articulation. So his head can't do anything. The head is stiff. You can turn the whole portrait, but, that's about as much as you'll get. And if you have the cape on, you can't do shit. Arms move up about that much. There's no issues there. You can sometimes push it a little bit further, like upward in the lateral, so that you can have him holding his cape. But you have to be careful because the shoulder and the bicep joint are all together, and it's hard to figure out where parts are. The bend at the elbow is nice, very nice, and it bends a little bit over 90 degrees. The swivel is good. You can easily, once you bend the elbow, you can easily find the swivel. The hands do exactly like every other Mezco, and then his wrists actually, like the gauntlets, the glove, has a swivel in there too, so that you can have him deflect bullets or swords or whatever. The waist is weird. So it's a ball jointed waist. I want to say it's a double ball jointed waist, so it can twist, it can move side to side, it can bend back just a little bit. You can see here that bending to the side is pretty good. Bending forward is where this thing really excels. Like, look at how far this crunch is. This is almost like an anatomically correct crunch like you would get from Figuarts, but look at that. And that's before I even do anything with the legs at all. It's pretty nice. But moving back, it's a different story. For some reason, he's a little bit restricted as you move him back. I've seen people push it, but now the leg is, I have issues. At the hip, I can't get this leg to move forward all the way. It moves forward and out. But when I try to, like, if you look at it, it's kind of aimed out to the side. It's jutting out to the side. If I wanted him to sit down, he would have to sit with his legs kind of open, like man spreading, so to speak. Now with this leg, it goes up just fine. I've tried to feel around in there and get it to go, but I've figured out what the issue is, and it's not going to be an easy fix. Now you can get him to kick high if you use the ab crunch and the leg articulation as well. Now when you're doing a split, as long as you direct the legs the right way, you can pull off the split. I was able to kind of get him to do the traditional high kick that I always make fighters do on my channel. Anytime I get a figure that can fight, I try to make them kick high. And you can kind of fake this and you can push it, but it was just kind of scary trying to figure out, like, that doesn't look good. You know what I mean? That does not look good. And trying to figure out where the limits are was just kind of, I was like, let me not push it. I'm just going to chill out with this. And even trying to move it back, you see how it's resisting? I was just like, I don't know about this, man. I don't know about this. So I'm going to be careful because I don't have very many with metal skeletons. I would assume that with a metal skeleton, steel skeleton, it should be stronger. But Mezco cuts corners. So you can't be sure. And even with the knees, you see how it kind of popped? Like, it didn't pop, but it gave finally. Everything was so stiff, and you'd think with a body like this, they would have tested the skeleton to have definite, recognizable articulation. Like, if you look at it, look at where his legs are right now. Why didn't they just go back to the relaxed position? It shouldn't be like this, given what it is that, it's an action figure. Knees, fine. You get the double jointed knees. They work really well. From the ankle down, beautiful. There's no issues. You got a boot swivel. You got an ankle swivel. You got the pivot. You don't have any toe articulation. I don't know why I'm yawning. It's like this. I've been working on this review for so long that I'm just kind of like, I'm tired of looking at this figure. And I love Keaton. So, this is all painful. But as you can see, lateral movement is fine. It's all the other in-betweens that just, they suck ass. But yeah, you got to be careful when you move these legs, but you get a general idea of what he is capable of. You can get him to do some things. You can straighten out the legs. You can kind of get some subtle shifts in his hips, but you really, really have to work at getting these poses. More so than any figure has the right to make you do. And that's where I have issues with. Like, there's so many little things I had to do to get this thing to stand up the right way. And a Batman figure should be straightforward. So, there you are. Now, one of the issues that I have is the skeleton in general. When you look at this skeleton, you can clearly see, especially in the crotch area, why there's an issue. Props to the folks on Instagram for getting us this shot, because we needed to know what was up, and they easily, supplied us with a shot to let us know what was up, and I'm very thankful for that. But this steel skeleton is over-engineered. You should have essentially the same joints as you normally have with your Mezcos in the same format as you normally have with your Mezcos. It should not be one of those things where, for some odd reason, the joints are, you know, either too stiff or there's too many, you know, twists and not enough tolerances, and they really fucked it up. Props to It's Dante 2.0 on Instagram. Thank you so much, homie. This next one, this is a close-up of the hips. These motherfuckers gave this toy fucking wide-jointed hips in 2023. Are you fucking kidding me? Isn't that a sin for action figures to have wide-jointed hips in this day and age? When was the last time you seen a high-end action figure, excuse me, with wide-jointed hips? What the fuck? They don't even normally do this shit. Fucking Marvel Select doesn't hardly even do this shit. They do it when the sculpt kind of requires it. You're telling me a Batman figure needs wide-jointed hips? Nah, not for no $127. And I don't know who did this picture. We just had the picture by itself. So if anyone knows, let me know. Let him know. Props to him, because, you know, he had issues with his and he cut it up just to see what's going on. And this will help a lot of people kind of either decide, you know, yay or nay in favor of, you know, buying or not buying this figure, because this is a lot to go through when it comes to whether or not this figure is actually worth the scratch. You know what I'm saying? Like, you shouldn't really have to make this choice, but, you know. So now we've come to the comparison. Let's compare. And we got a couple comparisons to make. So the main one that's going to be made is the Mezco and the NECA. Now, for the sake of this review, I used the Supreme Knight cape just to get it, you know, keep it out the way, because that thing's easy to work with. You can see not too much is different. It's a proportional thing. The Mezco one is a little bulkier, whereas the NECA one is skinnier. And then the mask has space in the mask as opposed to the Mezco one that's kind of form-fitting. Now, at times in the movie, you did get that, so it's not 100% off model. It just depends on what portion of the movie we're looking at. But you can see the details on the NECA one, kind of let you know where you stand. Here he is next to a Figuarts, you know, it's my mascot, gotta have him on there. And then one of my favorite current McFarlane Batman figures. I just got that custom cape for him, and you can see he's on the smaller side. Here he is next to the rest of the worthwhile Mezco Batman trilogy. Now, look at the capes. You know, now for the sake of the comparison, I left him with his stock cape without the wire, and look at how thick it is. And then I purposefully put him standing next to the Ascending Knight, who also has a thicker leather cape. And look at how it's just like no comparison. You know, it's almost as if they overdid all the engineering of that cape. And then here he is with Alfred. This Alfred is a little tall because it's on that Joker body, but it's a DC multiverse from back in the day. So there you go. Anyway, now we are at the bottom line. So this figure looks good, but there's, you know, issues everywhere. You know, the look is fine. There's no issues with the look, but articulation wise, he just can't do hardly anything without work. And he's Batman. Some people said, oh, he doesn't do too much. I mean, he just did that high kick. I mean, you know what I mean? Did we watch two different movies? He's Batman. He's supposed to do action hero type shit. So he's got to be able to, you know, jump and dive and roll and do ninja type kicks and punches and grapples and things like that. And this figure just, it's hard to confidently say you can do that with this guy. Now, atmospheric shots where he's in the shadows and stuff and he's just standing there, oh yeah, you'll be able to do that with no problem. But I can't, in my right mind, from the box to the weird joints, including the fucking wide jointed hips. I do like the wired cape when it's in action. I kind of love that because I'm starting to really, since the Supreme Knight, I love wired capes. Actually, even before that, honestly. I love this magnet system for the carousel on his belt. It's pretty cool. But like, then you have the peeling material for the body. And I have more peeling on the back side of this figure. And, you know, all of that shit. And then the shit cape, you know, the non-wired cape, the drape cape, quote unquote. Like, I should not have to put a different cape on the figure to make him feel more like what I spent my money on. You know what I'm saying? We spent $127 on this figure, you know? So I can't say that this is a good figure by any stretch. He gets a D, in my opinion. And that's bad, because I love Keaton. This is by far one of the worst versions of Keaton that they've done. And it's by far the worst Mezco that I've ever purchased. And it's the final nail in the coffin for me. I don't want any more. So in closing, a couple things that are big, you know, and these are the things that take away from the excitement and the willingness to put up with the BS for this figure. We waited 3.4 years to get this figure. Some people are still waiting right now to get this figure. Non-refundable deposit. 2 or 3 different bodies were made before they even bothered to say anything to us. They didn't give us a choice. They didn't run the idea by us. They just swapped bodies and just said, here you go. We saw better bodies or a better version of this figure earlier. And I'm pretty sure had they shipped that body, that figure, everybody would have been cool with it. No one would have complained, except for the people who like to complain for the sake of complaining and have no logical arguments to make. You know, you would not get these kind of videos like what I'm making right now from those people. So, you know, the fact that we waited so long and then they did all this non-intuitive, illogical nonsense and still charged us the same amount of money. If you make us wait 3 years after you promised us a figure with a release date and everything, and the release date was 3 years ago, you should be taking money off of this. You should also be giving us a better end product. We definitely shouldn't have a figure with wide-jointed hips and strange articulation going on in different areas. We shouldn't have that. We shouldn't have a figure that will lock up because some of the silicone mold for the body got into the joints and fucked up the way the joints should work. You should have coated the joints, coated the skeleton in another material that would retard the freaking silicone. That way we wouldn't have any issues when it comes to the articulation. But as you can see, many people have posted their pictures of their figures, some having no issues at all because in the process everything was done right, and then others like myself having stuck joints because silicone got into the joint and now it's stopping the joint from doing what it's supposed to do. And on top of that, when it comes to the hips, wide jointed hips are a no-no. You don't do that on figures that are supposed to be somewhat agile, that need to sit, that need to throw kicks, that need to be in jumping poses. You just don't do that shit. Juggernaut, it's fine. He's Juggernaut, he's huge. But like Batman, no. Captain America, hell no. You know what I mean? Black Widow, Spider-Man, any of those characters, fuck no. That's not how you do it. Form follows function, and this form goes against the character's function. They failed. Now the look of the figure, if you just want to put something up on your shelf, you technically already had that. You know what I mean? You had it twice over, maybe 3 times over if you count the different variations that Hot Toys have already done. But you had 2 different versions at least from Hot Toys. Then you had freaking NECA's version. Actually, we got 2 versions from NECA because we have the one, the quarter scale version. So you had a couple options. There's really no excuse for this figure to be as poorly done as he is. And there's also like kind of no excuse if you know, for you to ignore the others that were done so well in favor of this. You know what I mean? Because this was just not done to the best of fucking Mezco's ability. They've already done, every other Batman that they've done has been better than this. That says a lot, you know? Every other one they've done has been better in some way. I mean, you could tell that in recent years they've been kind of going downward, because if you look at the quality of the capes from the animated, or what was that, Silver or Golden Age Batman that they did a couple years back, or a year ago or something like that. His chin was weird. His cape was kind of fucked up, but the action cape with the wire was really good. It's foreshadowing of shit that we would be dealing with here with this figure. There's a lot of little things that, like, they kind of gave away the plot, you know, early on, that we were going to end up running into some of this stuff. But honestly, I wouldn't, at this point, if you have to have a Batman figure, if you really want a good Keaton Bats figure, track down the NECA or shell out the $300 for whatever it is Hot Toys has done. Because they blow this out the water, and if you're just going to put it on your shelf and look at it and you just want to have it just to say, this is Michael Keaton as Batman and this is the best looking version, get the Hot Toys. Fuck all this. You know, because this is not worth the money. Nothing in here is worth what they charged us, and the end result doesn't bode well for the quality of what this company is able to produce. And do not listen to all the dick riders that are going to tell you some nonsense about this being the perfect Batman. They say this shit all the time. Watch when McFarlane comes out with his. They're going to say the same shit. Watch whatever other third-party company comes out with something to kind of take the place of this figure, you know, to compete with this figure. They're going to say the same shit with that. Wake up, pay attention, ignore the dick riders. You need to pay attention to the logical arguments so that way you don't end up wasting your hard-earned money on a subpar product. That is it for me. You guys have been great. Peace outside.